Subscribe and leave a comment saying I subscribed, and I will personally reply to your comment. In the summer of 1990 in Gainesville, Florida, for 4 days, the University of Florida's sunlit campus became a hunting ground. The shadow in this nightmare was Danny Rolling, a drifter with a fractured mind, whose arrival marked the start of a grisly and haunting chapter. Rolling's spree began on August 24th, when he broke into the apartment of 17-year-old freshmen Sonia Larson and Christina Powell. The two were barely settling into their new life in Gainesville, having just begun to unpack dreams of college independence. That night, while one of them slept, Rolling entered undetected, knife in hand, driven by a fixation that saw his victims not as human beings, but as scenes for his dark, perverse fantasies. When his invasion reached the bedroom, the brutality erupted. He made his way through the small, quiet apartment with the systematic precision of a nightmare made flesh. There, his cruelty was personal, his violence almost ritualistic. The two girls were found the next day, mutilated, with their bodies posed in haunting, horrific ways, as though he had found an art in death that life could never offer him. But Rolling was not yet finished. The following day, he struck again, this time attacking 18-year-old Krista Hoyt, who was home alone in her apartment. Krista was a part-time record clerk and known for her kindness. When she did not show up for her job the next day, her co-workers grew worried. What they didn't know was that Danny Rolling had already slipped into her apartment, waiting for her return. His act on her was no less monstrous, but he left her staged in an even more gruesome tableau. Rolling had carefully manipulated her body, going as far as to remove her head, as if seeking to craft a display that would grip the memory of anyone who discovered it. By then, Gainesville was gripped by panic. Students clung together for safety, flocking to supermarkets and hardware stores for locks, deadbolts, and window bars. Rumors spread of the killer lurking around every corner, hiding in plain sight. But Rolling, cunning and careful, wasn't finished. He made his final move on August 27th, when he broke into the apartment of Tracy Pauls and Manny Tabawada. The two 23-year-olds, close friends and roommates, were about to face the full brunt of Rolling's depravity. Manny, larger and stronger than his previous victims, fought back with a courage that matched the intensity of Rolling's violence. But the drifter, almost supernaturally focused, managed to overpower and kill him. Tracy, awakened by the commotion, met her own brutal end shortly after. Her life and her dreams, like those of Rolling's other victims, came to a bloody and sudden halt. In the days that followed, Gainesville was forever marked. Rolling's vicious spree left behind a scar that ran deeper than the murders themselves. With every whispered rumor, the legend of the Gainesville Ripper grew, expanding beyond the bounds of memory and reality. The atmosphere Rolling created, the inexplicable fear, the predator in an idyllic college town, would later inspire the masked killer stalking students in Wes Craven's Scream, starring Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox. Eventually, the police caught Rolling, finding evidence linking him to the crimes, including a small camp where he had hidden items stolen from his victims. He confessed and was convicted, meeting his end by lethal injection in 2006. On July 22, 1995, the brutal and tragic murder of Elise Paller, a 15-year-old girl from Arroyo Grande, California, unfolded in a quiet patch of woodland near her family's home. This crime, both horrifying and surreal, ultimately inspired the 2009 horror film Jennifer's Body, starring Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried. Elise's murder remains one of the most infamous cases of teens murdering a peer in the twisted hope of achieving power and fame, made all the more sinister by the perpetrator's connection to a little-known thrash metal band called Hatred. Elise Paller was a bright, sociable teenager with a love for dance and a close-knit family. On the night of her murder, 3 local boys, Jacob DeLashmutt, Joseph Fiorella, and Royce Casey, aged between 15 and 17, convinced Elise to meet them, saying they wanted to hang out and drink. These boys, whom Elise barely knew, had a hidden, morbid agenda, one that would not become fully understood until later. They were members of Hatred, a fledgling death metal band whose lyrics centered on violence, suffering, and satanic themes. Lyrics which the boys would later claim fed directly into their chilling motivations. When Elise arrived to meet them, the boys took her to an isolated area in the eucalyptus grove. There, they brutally attacked her, strangling and stabbing her multiple times in what they later admitted was a satanic ritual murder, a sacrifice they believed was required to gain special powers to make their band famous. During questioning, Delashmut claimed that the band believed that this murder would help them reach a higher level of musical success. They described their act as a sacrifice to the devil, hoping it would grant them guitar skills, fame, and power. In a haunting twist, Elise's body was not discovered until 8 months later after one of the boys confessed. Her family had spent those months tirelessly searching for her, thinking she might have run away. Her decomposing body lay hidden in the grove, not far from the neighborhood where she grew up. In interviews, the killer showed a disturbing lack of remorse, expressing regret mainly that the murder had not given them the results they'd expected. In the aftermath of the murder, Elise's family filed a lawsuit against the band slayer, which the boys claimed inspired them with its violent, dark lyrics. Though the suit was ultimately dismissed, it brought to public attention the complex and troubling intersections between music, youth, and violence. The impact of Elise Paller's murder lingers, a haunting echo that inspired Jennifer's body. In the film, a teenage girl's murder at the hands of a Satan-worshipping band backfires, transforming her into a vengeful demon who preys upon her classmates. Though fictionalized, Jennifer's body resonates with the darkness of Elise's story, bringing a brutal reminder of the real-life horror that inspired it.
The Texarkana Moonlight Murders were a series of brutal attacks that terrorized the town of Texarkana, which straddles the Texas-Arkansas border, over a period of about 10 weeks in 1946. These murders, also known as the Phantom Killer Murders, left 5 people dead and 3 others injured. And to this day, they remain unsolved. The case has since become infamous, both for the fear it instilled in the community and for its influence on popular culture, notably inspiring the 1976 horror thriller, The Town That Dreaded Sundown. The spree began on the night of February 22, 1946, when 25-year-old Jimmy Hollis and his girlfriend, 19-year-old Mary Jean Larry, were attacked while parked on a secluded road outside of Texarkana. Around midnight, a man wearing a white mask that resembled a pillowcase, with holes cut out for his eyes and mouth, approached the car. He ordered Hollis out of the vehicle, beat him severely, and S.A. Larry before she managed to escape and alert authorities. Despite her escape, the masked assailant managed to disappear into the night. A few weeks later, on March 24th, the killer struck again. This time, he murdered 29-year-old Richard L. Griffin and his girlfriend, 17-year-old Polly Ann Moore, as they sat in a car parked on a rural road. Their bodies were discovered the next morning by a passing motorist. Both had been shot in the back of the head, and blood evidence suggested they had been dragged out of the car before being killed. The brutality of the crime shocked the community, leading the local press to dub the assailant the Phantom Killer. On April 14th, 17-year-old Betty Jo Booker and her friend, 15-year-old Paul Martin, became the Phantom Killer's next victims. Booker, a talented saxophonist, had played at a local club that evening. When Martin picked her up afterward, they planned to go to another friend's house, but they never arrived. Their bodies were discovered hours later, Martin having been shot several times, while Booker's body was found almost 2 miles from Martin's, also shot. Booker's saxophone was missing from the scene and has never been recovered, adding to the mysterious nature of the case. The final known attack occurred on May 3rd, targeting a middle-aged couple, Virgil and Katie Starks, in their rural farmhouse on the Arkansas side of Texarkana. The Phantom Killer shot Virgil Starks twice through a window, killing him instantly. When Katie tried to call for help, the killer entered the house, shooting her twice in the face. Despite her severe injuries, Katie managed to escape to a neighbor's house and survived. The Phantom Killer, however, fled before police could arrive, leaving behind no identifiable evidence. The local and state police, along with the Texas Rangers, launched an extensive investigation led by famed Ranger Manuel Lone Wolf Gonzalez. Law enforcement conducted dozens of interviews, patrolled Texarkana's streets and rural roads, and questioned potential suspects, but leads were sparse. Many in the town believed the killer to be a local, but no definitive evidence or eyewitness testimony could confirm a suspect's identity. The lack of forensic technology at the time made it challenging to analyze evidence in the same way it would be handled today. While some fingerprints and bullets were collected, these were ultimately inconclusive. Hundreds of individuals were detained for questioning, and several suspects were considered, but none were formally charged with the murders. The Phantom Killer's reign of terror left Texarkana's residents paralyzed with fear. Gun sales surged, curfews were enforced, and residents began locking their doors at night, a rare practice in the area at the time. In response to the attacks, many people refused to go out after dark, and there was a notable decline in late-night social activities. Texarkana became a town living in fear, with many residents feeling as if the killer could strike at any moment. After the final attack on the Starks, no further incidents were reported. Despite several investigations over the years and attempts to reopen the case, the identity of the Phantom Killer has never been conclusively proven. The Texarkana Moonlight Murders inspired a legacy of horror and speculation, culminating in the release of the 1976 film The Town That Dreaded Sundown, directed by Charles B. Pierce. While the film took liberties with the details of the murders, it cemented the story of the Phantom Killer in popular culture. In Texarkana, the film is shown annually at Halloween, becoming a local tradition and a somber reminder of the town's haunted history.
Subscribe and leave a comment saying "I subscribed," and I will personally reply to your comment.
If you would like to hear more stories and support this channel, please give this video a thumbs up